you have a problem with these gentlemen having a barbecue here at the lake? What's going on?
Now she don't want to talk.
She doesn't want to talk now.
It's illegal to have a charcoal grill in the park here.
No, it's not actually. I just looked at the map. It says this is a designated barbecue area.
No, not for a charcoal grill. No charcoal grills are allowed. Do you want to see it?
Yeah, I gotta try and get me
You must not have looked up.
What kind of grill are you not allowed, and why are you so bent out of shape over them being
because
here?
Because it causes extra money from our city to do things when children get injured because of improperly disposed of.
So are you saying that they're going to hurt children out here, or I mean, like, what is with this?
There's laws about this park, and
I know the laws about this park.
And charcoal grills are not allowed here. No, I'm not.
Now she's trying to run away.
They are following me.
You've been following us all day for 2 hours.
I've been waiting for police to come for 2 hours.
You've been following us for 2 hours.
The American people are in for a hard time. See, what the white people of America don't understand is that, see, they were given certain privileges for a couple, 200 or 300 years because their owners, right, their elite needed them to, number one, conquer the land, conquer the people, conquer the land, and then attack the land, attack the resources of the land, turn it into material, and have a certain productivity. So they needed the white people to do this. So they had to give them certain privileges.
I'm being harassed.
Okay. Can you back off?
I would like her to see the card that she stole from me.
Can you back off?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm at the quick stop. Ma'am, can you just back off just a tad so I can talk to her? Thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
But now it's all gone global. They don't need the white people to do this anymore. They don't need them the same way they needed them before, so they're going to take the privileges away now. I mean, it's happening all over the place. The job, you know, this is connected to the World Trade Organization. This is connected to the GATT, all the companies that are moving out of the U.S. and they're going over where they can hire people to work for $6 a day instead of paying somebody $15 an hour here and give them health insurance. The way this is all unfolding. So the white people in America are in for a big surprise.
I'm being harassed.
Okay.
See, the majority of the blacks never got out of poverty, the majority of the blacks never made it out. Majority of the Indians never made it out. Majority of the Hispanics never made it out. They just allow enough of a percentage of us to make the so-called middle class thing, so you have a little makeup on. But the whites were allowed to make it out. Now they're going to get put back in. And when it happens to them, they're going to have a very violent, insane reaction to this.
Serious crap.
Aloha. So that was a quick just introduction into the perspective that I'm taking in this video that's going to have a focus of another content creator that I know from Oakland who did a really good job on a video that I'll link in the description. But the basic premise of this video is the psychology behind manipulating the masses to think, act, and feel a certain way, along with the controlling the dialogue through the masses of people by playing emotions, by selling a particular perspective through the mainstream media, through movies, through politics, through the education system, through generations upon generations of manipulating people to perceive other people a certain way. So when you're seeing people get killed on the streets by cops, and you see other people get bombed around the world in the name of the United States and fighting so-called terrorism and making America great again, and that whole psychosis, basically, that whole psychosis of the Western idea of civilization, the colonial psychosis that's out there. It created a mentality that still exists today. That mentality was created by manipulating the way people think, act, and feel towards other people. So the original mainstream media manipulation program was to generalize and label the indigenous people, or pretty much anybody that is not of a so-called Caucasian or European background, because that's really what the term white did. It so-called unified all of the European people in the so-called New World to create this army, which John Trudell was talking about. This army that now defends the mainstream mind control programs. The mainstream mind control programs and the overall authority grid, or the authority matrix that we're falling underneath today. So the whole power grid has been seeded through the people for centuries. And the same way you feel a certain way about, or felt a certain way about indigenous people back in the day when they called you primitive and savage, today's version, that was the beginning of the desensitization program, in order to push the limits of the synthetic definition of humanity. You have to first desensitize people so they don't feel anything. They can't smell, they can't taste the bullshit, they can't smell the upcoming mind control, they can't see the upcoming injustices, because they won't. And eventually, if you don't see it for so long and you've been desensitized for so long, you then won't really, you won't care. So you'll numb out. You'll get to this space of, well, nothing really matters, because it's ultimate hopelessness. That's what it boils down to. You become hopeless. And then you have the other side of it, where people are so vested in that system of keeping certain people down in order to protect this idea of make America great again. This is why Make America Great Again is out there right now. It's the overcompensation in the mainstream consciousness of people to not investigate the historical evidence of this entire empire being built on injustices and, in fact, inhumanity. There's no humanity in the way any of these systems are running. This is why they have to tell you that they're philanthropists, and they're, giving food and they're giving health and protection and security to all these other nations. They're not. That's just what they tell you in order to get the permission from you through the voting system and through your just lack of giving a shit. They tell you that, but the contract, the small writing in the contract actually says, we're going to go over there and steal their land and poison their people and just create another stomping ground for our colonial empire. So thanks a lot, people who didn't really ask any questions, because you've been controlled and manipulated to not care about what's really going on, because you're taken care of. As long as you're taken care of, nothing else really matters. This is why you see so much public outcries for things to actually happen when you see something happen in Europe. So these so-called bombings that were in France or anywhere in Europe, anything that's dealing with a non-indigenous or what's the word? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. when it deals with so-called white people, it's a big problem. Like, it's a big deal. This is the same way. It's just the other side of the coin from how Hollywood is completely so-called whitewashed. It's designed to make you feel a certain way about a certain people and feel another way about other people. Like, if it's not consciously, it's definitely, it's anchored in the subconscious, but it exists. It gets manifest into your reality in the conscious from just following all of this stuff. So this ongoing mind control exists inside the infrastructure, the very design of the mainstream media, even the design of your sports, your arenas. Like, look at your referees and look at they're all small little, on average, they're like tiny little white guys, so-called white guys, in comparison to these big, giant, aggressive beasts. They have to control these big, giant, aggressive beasts who are basically just going to fight each other if the little white man is not there to make sure everything is okay. And if things get out of hand, they're going to blow their whistle or pull out their card or throw a flag or throw you out of the game or give you a technical foul or or point a finger at you and say, you shouldn't do that again. We're going to give them the opportunity to make more points because of your aggression and your anger. This is what the gladiator arena, all the gladiator arenas are saying to you and your children subconsciously. Children are watching every single detail. They know the owners. They know the coaches. They see the faces of the referees. They see Draymond Green and everybody else getting kicked out of the game because they were yelling or something, or maybe they didn't even do anything. I've seen people get technical fouls in the NBA. They didn't even do anything. They just look like they're doing something, and maybe they just But the thing is, it's unquestionable. Unquestionable. Their word is unquestionable. They have the utmost. They actually have more power than the entire the entire series or the entire league. They actually control the league. So you have them in control on the floor, and then you have the general managers, guess who they are, up there controlling the money. So they're paying the beast to play and entertain them. No different than back in the day with all that other cartoon shit that there was a entertain us. You just savage and primitive beasts get to entertaining us. And then what happens, another part of that is you get generalized and you don't really get to express, or what happens with other people is that they look at you a certain way and then say, oh, well, that's the only thing that they have to offer. So it adds to the privileged perspective. It adds to the we're better than them perspective. It adds to the eugenics perspective, actually, the idea that Europeans are the evolutionary peak of humanity, whereas the indigenous people are just these old, savage, primitive, older version, like they're like the Windows 98 version of humanity, whereas so-called white people are like the new what's it called, like the new iPhone 10 or whatever the operating system is and the newest technology. Those are what so-called white people are, and that's what it represents. That's what's being promoted to the entire world every single day through the subconscious programming and the conscious programming. But obviously, if you study the subconscious programming of the mainstream media. So the mainstream media, that's why I said in reference to like any of these other conspiracy channels or any of these that aren't really looking at the macrocosm perspective of how and why this information affects us. Excuse me. How and why this information affects us the way it does. Why it exists the way it does. And like later on you'll start to see like how it affects us. So you can see how it affected that lady in there. She has this privileged mentality where she sees people out there having a good time and she wants to maintain control. She's such a control freak that she has to use her only leverage, which is the law of the land, this law, this fake synthetic law of this land, and call her crew to come numb this out, because she thinks that she's in charge of the world. That's what happens when you get subconsciously programmed. You have these people who think that they've had their heads pumped up for so long that they think that they're in charge of the world. And that came from the idea of manifest destiny. So this manifest destiny consciousness still exists in the people today. And like John Trudell was saying, white people, so-called white people, are in for a rude awakening because they needed them. The system needed them back in the day in order to act as the army that's going to actually take the land, that's going to move their family in there and their kids and make it look like it's very like family oriented and very nice. But they were actually using those people to act as an anchor point in order to steal the land and eventually get the military in there to genocide the people. But the people act like they turn a blind eye to it, and they act like this never happened and never existed. And since it's not existing the way it did back in the day, it doesn't matter anymore. So you have all these people walking around protecting a system that never gave a shit about you in the first place, and now more openly is not giving a shit about you now. This is why you have people like Richie from Boston and Alex Jones and whoever else is yelling at the system about chemtrails or the globalists or turning the freaking frogs gay or whatever the hell it is that's out there. Like, you have people yelling at the system as if the system gives a shit about you. This is why I left the Occupy protest and that whole, because I was locked up into the idea of psychological warfare, and I was largely unaware of the spiritual warfare that predates any of these laws that shouldn't be existing in the first place, that come from this Western so-called civilization. So people like Alex Jones, they're just protecting this system. This is why he teamed up with Trump, in order to hold that line of make America great again. Whereas that's just the, like I said, this the overcompensation of what the truth actually is. What do you mean make America great again? If you're enveloped in a conversation of make America great again, in the wall and how much of a piece of shit he is, you know how long it's going to take to get back to talking about the fact that this system shouldn't even exist in the first place. The fact that this system is still profiting off of the blood and the bones of the indigenous people. You're never going to get into that conversation if you're so distracted by all of these chemtrails and Alex Jones's frogs and Trump and the late night talk shows and Hollywood, the new movies, Infinity War and Black Panther and all this shit that comes out. Every single one of those things is like a little dopamine drip of distraction, a dopamine drip of deflection, a dopamine drip of desensitization. And you never really get out of that world, because that now becomes your world. This is what the idea, the intention of the mainstream media is. It's designed to do that. It's designed to replace your consciousness, replace your natural abilities, replace your natural connection with the land and each other with the synthetic interpretations of ownership, control, and eventually it turns into manipulation. When you're in that ownership and control world for so long, now you want to manipulate the system to work for you. And this is what so-called white people are doing, have been doing, and are, realizing that it's never going to work. It's never going to work. You're basically no different than us now. But you're suffering from this diminishing privilege. This is what's happening. It's a diminishing privilege. This diminishing privilege is hurting people, because people, so-called white people, because their entire persona, their entire ideas of themselves have been vested in this this privilege that has been lasting for so long, but it was only existing because the government, the system, needed the people to act as the pawns, act as the army, act as the deflectors and the desensitization anchor points to keep people from going to the depths of, you know, the fact that this system shouldn't exist in the first place. This is why I said the biggest threat to humanity right now are these so-called truthers and so-called conspiracy theorists who are basically like Alex Jones, who are channeling all of this information and all of these injustices back into the system as if the system is going to do anything about it. You're basically working for the system. It doesn't matter if you talk about every single conspiracy out there. If you don't go into the very nature of the system, you're helping the system get stronger by bringing attention to the fact that, or the artificial fact that the system's not, it's not built this way. It's just broken and needs to change and needs to be fixed. And that's why all this emotion comes from, like, I'm going outside and I see the chemtrails every day, or Alex Jones talking about, he's just like, that's emotion, because that emotion comes from expectation. That emotion comes from expectation. Yelling at chemtrails every day is because you have an emotional attachment to the expectations of this system. If you're not grounding yourself in like a deeper than grassroots perspective, going into the tree roots. So you're going to have these expectations, just like that lady had this expectation of being in control of the people who are at the park. So she pulled her little leverage. She thinks she's a fucking police officer. She thinks she's in control of she's a referee of the world. She's in charge of, she's an umpire of the entire, of all of the lands here. So she got in their biggest defense, and you saw it, their biggest defense, once they get their team, the police officers, to show up, is to be the victim. So she turns into a crying victim and hopes that her tears will create her synthetic justice. Well, her tears will hopefully get these people to go to jail. I just saw a video right just now of a lady yelling at a guy, I think who was in a car. She was recording him, he was recording her. She was on the street just walking around, and she's literally yelling, gun, he's got a gun, don't point that gun at me, as if she, and dude is literally like riding away from her. He's driving or whatever he was. He's going away from her. She's walking towards him yelling gun. She's literally setting up the situation for this guy to get shot as she's lying about that situation. And that's the same kind of privileged mentality that this lady had. The point is that mentality exists in the subconscious of the entire system. Every single body that doesn't address this system thinks that way in some kind of percentage, whether they are aware of it or not. And like I said, this is in the subconscious, so you don't have to be aware of it. It's been programmed into your consciousness. It's been programmed into your generations that predate this moment. So that's the infrastructure of the system, and you just have that, you have that mentality of being the aggressor or being the controller, being the like the forefathers mentality. Their faces are on these mountains. They own the land. They own everything. So the people think the same way. See, that's what's reinforced through all these people who are just, following either the Trump Make America, whether it's extreme where you have people who are just like so empowered now by the Trump Make America Great Again thing that they're literally lynching people. People are being lynched right now. I mean, it's been happening, but you're seeing more of it now because, well, they're advertising it more. They're putting it out there more because they want people to be shallow. Like they want this shallow explanation of what's going on. They just want people in their fear to get emotionally charged about this stuff and not really do anything about it. But they're also creating this they're adding to the desensitization. They're creating this atmosphere, but they're also getting you into a world of thought where you're not thinking for yourself. You don't have the opportunity to have any critical thought. You're emotionally reacting to a particular mind control program. And this mind control program is like I said, it's reinforced every single day from the perspective of, like that lady has in this video. She goes from the control freak to, backed by the rules of the government and the law that says, taxpayer money is going to get lost because you're using charcoal in the park. And I'm in charge of making sure that we don't lose taxpayers' money because you fucking primitive savages are out here barbecuing with charcoal grills and having a good time. Like, that's another part of it. It's like they don't want you to see you having a good time. Like, you can't have a good time. You're supposed to just die first in every single movie. You're just supposed to be the person who dies in the movie. Like, we use you as a token so we don't seem racist in Hollywood. So you're just gonna die in the first part of the movie. So you don't really matter in life. So I can just call the cops on you whenever I want for whatever reason that I have, and I can yell gun in the street and hope that somebody will come and shoot you because I have the power to say that. She's been empowered to say that and act that way. So this exists in the very nature of the system. This is why George Bush can say, we're just gonna go beat the shit out of Iraq, and then take the oil, take the land, build military bases over there, start a whole new unending war. And it really doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be based in any kind of truth. It's just gonna happen, and fuck it, just deal with it. And American people are gonna be like, oh, okay, yeah, we're angry, do it. Strong, evolved world people from the Americas, the best flag in the world. Now look at you. 17 years later. So, to close this out, the point being is that the mainstream media in particular is designed to make you think, act, and feel a certain way. To the extremes. The way it's manipulated, your local news, your mainstream world news, and all that other stuff, it's manipulated to affect you physically, psychologically, and spiritually. It's designed to affect you physically, spiritually, and psychologically. And when you are unaware of the way it affects you, you become subjected to the mind control programs that were installed in that system overall. The lady was programmed with that. All these politicians, they actually live that. They are the program. So the system treats you a certain way. Now, with YouTube and all these people who have access to their own ways to express or share information, you have the opportunity to break people out of that mind control program simply by sharing the perspectives or sharing the information from a perspective that it largely is just the truth. So, like, in reference to a friend of mine who did this video that I'm getting ready to either show or show a clip of or whatever, or the one that's linked in the description, is from growing up in Oakland, I know that the majority of people, what actually goes down, it's not what you see on the news. And most people already know that. So that if that exists, what actually is going on? What is going on? In order to find that out, you have to talk to the people. And you have to talk to the people about the right subjects. The thing is, the mainstream media doesn't want to talk to the people about the right subjects. Because the right subjects will disempower, it will remove the power from the mainstream media. If you ask the right questions, they're gonna answer themselves outside of power. So they don't ask the right questions. So when the mainstream media approaches people who are already privy to the depths of this system, we just don't want to deal with the bullshit. So a lot of the times we just act like, oh, well, fuck it. You know, you're going to say whatever you're going to say anyway, or we emotionally just kind of walk away, or they find people. This is what actually happens. Most of it, they find people who want to speak, but really just don't have any clue about what's going on, or they look ignorant or sound ignorant, or they amplify what they want to amplify. Just like I said in the NBA, the atmosphere of these beasts, you know, running around playing with a ball, and who's in charge and who's in control on the floor, that whole thing. It's the same mentality. So what's happening now is that people are starting to realize the mind control and start to ask deeper questions. And these deeper questions are being answered no longer by your university system, no longer by your politicians, but from the people on the streets, the people in your communities, the people that really don't have a voice. There's no voice anymore because they've already labeled you as aggressive, you know, not intelligent at all. They're not gonna, as the mainstream media doesn't give a shit about your perspectives. If they have already labeled you a savage, they don't care about what, you know, you actually think and what you feel, because the system it makes its money off of you not thinking and you not feeling, period. Because that is the definition of desensitization. So when you're desensitized, you can be controlled easily. Because you have no information, you have no passion, you have no empathy, you have no sense of justice, you have no sense of connection. You're just this thing that exists in reality, and, you know, everything's okay because it's not happening to you, the shit that's going on. But the thing is, now it's starting to happen to you. Or it's these other people, and these other people are starting to like say, well, this is bad. This shouldn't be happening. Look at them spraying chemtrails in the sky. How dare they go? They're gonna talk about them spreading genocide across the earth. Not to take away from chemtrails being sprayed in the sky, but the chemtrails that predate the chemtrails was genocide, colonialism. What gave the system the power to create chemtrail programs? If you're just yelling at chemtrails, you're playing checkers at best. And what happens is that people are a lot of people don't really want to go into the depths. So you just get that continual dopamine drip of a limited frame of consciousness, and you have this synthetic illusion of feeling better or being informed, because every day you just keep reading the same magazine. But the magazine changes the story just a little bit every now and again, but it's still the same magazine. It's still the same information. It's still, the premise is still the same. The effect is still the same. So people once they do that over and over and over again, even if they get into a so-called truther community, they're going to take that rhythm of that mind control from the mainstream media, and whatever expression that they put out is going to have that old school mind control rhythm. What people are doing now is breaking the rhythm of the mainstream mind control program, breaking the rhythm of the desensitization programs, breaking the rhythms of this privileged mentality, breaking the rhythms of all of these conditioned systems in our reality, breaking all of them, and now sharing the stories from the tree roots, finally. Because people have finally realized that the system overall is not interested in informing you in anything at all. It's more interested. Its intention is to control you. So if you come to that conclusion, now what is your responsibility? Especially if you're a creator or an artist. Well, your responsibility is, first of all, to share the deepest. You're just gonna paint. You want to paint stick figures. If you're an artist, let's say a painter. If you're a painter, but you do really good stick figures, and stick figures are what is selling right now. But it's selling out now because it's running out of importance, but it was getting like views and all that stuff. So the stick figure mentality is starting to fall to the wayside, and people are starting to paint again. Just because stick figures were, pulling a high profit doesn't mean that's the way it's supposed to be. So we've basically been living within a society or a culture of stick figures. There's no paint, there's no information, there's no heart, there's no soul, there's no passion, there's no real essence of anything there. That's the baseline of the mainstream media. So All Streets Looks is his channel. I'm linking his channel or their channel in the description box. This is just one video that I'm linking in the description box that is an example of actually talking to the people and getting a perspective from the people rather than being in a reactionary mentality based upon what social media or the mainstream media puts out there for you to fall within. So this lady now that's out there with the phone, like, it turns into a joke. So most people just don't talk about, the depths of what's really going on here. Most people just get lost in, the fact that, wow, something good happened out of this, but we don't really realize that ultimately the psychology was like a really bad thing. Like, I mean, some really jacked up things could have went down if you had the wrong police officer show up, or if you had in another situation, if it was just, whatever, it could have went really bad. And it has gone really bad in other situations because of a very similar situation. So that leads up to those kind of events happening because of the mainstream conditioning program. Whereas now, and you won't get the actual storyline unless you talk to the people that were there. So, and that's our responsibility as artists, and that's our responsibility as people who share information or content or whatever. It's your responsibility to go into the depths of it. Or are you just going to consume yourself with the stick figure thing that gets more views, the stick figure perspective that gets more attention? It's needing of your own paint in order to actually wake people up. If you're just talking about the stick figures, which is just like talking about chemtrails, just yelling, you might as well just get into a spaceship and fly up to the chemtrails and point your finger at the chemtrails in the chemtrails and think that that's going to do something. What is it going to do? You're not going to get anything accomplished if you're informing people, but you're informing people without allowing them or bringing the perspective of them empowering themselves. If you inform people with fucked up information and you don't balance it with empowering them, you're just going to create an uninformed or misinformed, emotional, reactionary person. That's what's happening with all this conspiracy and truther and Alex Jones information. They want half misinformed and uninformed emotional bodies, emotional numbers. They don't want people to actually think. They don't want people to actually critically think about the situation on a deeper layer of consciousness. Because if you start going there, you start unraveling all of the mind control programs that bank on you not thinking for yourself. Because if you don't think for yourself, you can't act for yourself. You have to first think before the action comes. So if there's no thinking there, then there will be no action. So they're manipulating with you to get you, so you get physically distracted by the emotion, the jokes about these storylines, and then you don't think about it because you've just laughed it away. And since you haven't thought about it because you got caught up in the way the mainstream media told you to think about it, then you don't do anything about it because you don't know what to do about it because you didn't know that there was something deeper that was going on there. That's the intent of the mainstream media. So sharing information from a deeper perspective is sharing information from like a street level perspective or sharing information from the indigenous perspective. That's what I'm talking about is really needed in reference to us actually making some forward progress without really concerning ourselves with, the bullshit that the system is going to do. It's going to do whatever it's going to do, and you're going to have to react to it. You're going to have to adjust to it, however you're going to. The system has enough power to do whatever it wants to do because of the amount of people that empower the system. You give the power to the system. So there's enough people giving power to the system that will allow this system to do whatever it wants to do. So the people who are aware of that now have a responsibility to start doing things that counteract the doingness of that system eventually, and at simultaneously empowering yourself, not one-sided, not getting sucked into its offense and defense. You can't just get into offense all the time. You can't just stay in defense all the time. It's not a one-dimensional system that's going on here. You have to be able to expand and realize the balances of this storyline. So one of the biggest threats that are out there that passes the information down to the biggest threat, which is the people who allow this situation to expand, is the mainstream media. And the information that comes through the mainstream media. It is a psychological warfare like cannon or bomb or whatever it is. That's what the mainstream media is. It's basically like the mainstream media actually is more than that. It's like the Air Force. In reference to the entire military, the mainstream media is like the Air Force. And then you have the Army, the Navy, the Marines, and Coast Guard's really not a part of it, the literal government, but they actually use the Coast Guard to do some fucked up shit in the water too. But anyway, point being with this is that check that video out. I've linked in the description. Look into what's going on, and then look at the faces of the people. Listen to the people. Listen to really feel out the humanity in it. Like, look at how people are alive and how resilient and beautiful people really are, as opposed to what's promoted by the mainstream media every day when you hear the name of the town Oakland. Like, when you hear that, like, people are always getting into this gang member and that whole thing, that whole mentality, drugs and guns and all that shit. And that's just the steady, repetitive movie that gets played over and over again, no different than the mainstream media or Hollywood constantly putting out slave movies, where they're constantly going to put out gang and drug movies or perspectives in reference to particular groups of people. But when you actually, like, and I'm speaking from proof from actually growing up and living there, that's not actually how it is. Not to say it doesn't exist, only to say that the majority of the focus in the town is not that. That at best is secondary. What's first is the perspective of the people, the intelligence of the people, the dance, the culture of the people. That's first and foremost, and they never want you to see that shit, ever. You will always be consumed by what they want you to be conditioned with. And that is this reactionary, dead, beastly sort of nothingness human that is just an older version of human evolution, and the newer version is just this technologically like empowered by the university system and colonialism, privileged mentality individual who is just protecting that system by just talking about the laws of the Constitution and that, and they never go into the fact that they're still standing and sleeping on top of the blood and the bone of the indigenous people. The fact that this system shouldn't exist in the first place. So in order to tell that story, you have to go talk to the people. And All Street Looks did put together a really good video explaining the situation from the people that were there. After, for people who aren't aware, later on in that week, or I think it was on 510. So it was sometime after the lady with the phone incident went down, people showed up back to the park and, did a barbecue again, and really came together in solidarity to not allow this consciousness to take over. Because basically that lady expressed the consciousness of gentrification. She's the living embodiment of gentrification and how gentrification affects people. See, people don't want to live around that shit. That fucking lady, she's a stain to society. She's a fucking stain. So people don't want to live around that. And if that's filling up your community and people don't want to live around that, they're going to fucking leave. So that's what gentrification does. Especially on the other side of that is also people getting caught, the cops called on them constantly. This happened in my neighborhood. Like all of a sudden everybody was just in trouble all the time because people were calling the cops. Like, why the fuck are the cops here now? Nothing was really going on ever. But for people who feel in control and scared, that's the thing. Subconsciously and consciously, but mostly subconsciously, so-called white people, not to generalize, but people who make those moves and those actions, they're living in fear. They're scared. So their only strength is the system. Their only strength is colonialism. Their only strength is make America great again. Their only strength is the forefathers. Their only strength is the world that exists after genocide, massacres, and colonialism went down. Their only strength is this inhumane system. So they will remain willfully ignorant as long as possible. Even in a so-called truther or intelligence and conspiracy theory community, whatever the hell you want to call it, they will remain ignorant, whether it's happily, comedically ignorant, or just like ignorant, or informed ignorance, like truthful ignorance. That's what yelling at chemtrails every day is. It's honest ignorance. It's truth. It's informative. It exists. It really needs to be spoken about. But the way it's being spoken about is just bullshit. You're just entertaining people. It's entertainment. You're a salesman for an inhumane system. So it's a responsibility of the people right now to start counteracting this alchemy that goes on every single day. It's affecting your kids and social media. It's affecting everything. And until we start reversing this alchemy and expressing the empowered perspectives, nothing's going to actually change. You have to do both, offense and the defense. You have to counteract their energy, their magic, their alchemy, and simultaneously empower yourself. At best, talking about chemtrails or talking about all these conspiracy theories out there, at best, that is defending, that is like counter, it's like a shield against the mind control manipulators, doing that stuff to you, because eventually people on massive scale are going to start talking about chemtrails. So good job. But when that system or those people start talking about chemtrails, start talking about it, and they don't have any power or perspectives or any critical thoughts in an offensive perspective there, they're going to walk themselves into a mind control program. This shit is happening with a lot of these communities everywhere. They're only focused on, you know, the Hegelian dialectic of one against the other. Let's just, you know, fight chemtrails, or let's fight this story or fight that story, and really just don't go into anything else beyond that. Because they don't know how to. They don't know how to play offense. And the offense is not offense like you're playing defense. The offense is the internal offense. The offense that exists inside of you. See, when you're playing defense, you're playing in reaction to or you're defending yourself from the mind control that's being thrown your way into your future generations. So largely it's in relation to what the other team or what the other side is doing. And this side of control and manipulation is doing a lot of things. So you have to envelop, or you have to connect all of these stories together in order to really be playing an effective defense. But offensively, that has to come from the inside. If you're playing offense from the physical consciousness and you ain't done shit for your psychological, your mental, your mental and your spiritual consciousness, then you're never gonna do anything for the psychological and the spiritual warfare. You're going to be consumed by the physical warfare. And that's exactly where the system wants you to be consumed in, the physical warfare. So you don't go into the actual power that will remove the mind controls of the physical warfare from the psychological and spiritual warfare perspective, the one that envelops, the ones that envelop all of this mind control. See, consuming yourself with reactionary programs is not going to allow you to go into the depths of what you're really going to be able to, the actions that you're going to need to do to really make any kind of movement, any kind of power, empowering people, and in presenting a position or a situation for people to empower themselves. So yeah, yelling and becoming emotional and reactionary to chemtrails or whatever else is out there, that's like I said, in my eyes, that's one of the biggest threats to humanity. Because the system is going to say, perfect, we got them right where we want them. Angry and uninformed. Now we can get them all kinds of cupcakes and candy and all kinds of shit. And they don't even have to be good. They just have to be something, and people are going to eat it up. And they're going to want more. And the fact of them, you know, getting you, grabbing you by the balls and being like, we got you. Now you want this, now you want that. We have you wanting from us. That means we have you giving us the power that shouldn't exist in the first place. So you can get people angry and all that other stuff you want, but you will never get away from the fact that this is going to affect and is affecting people a certain way. And that video with that lady and all those other videos that are out there, that people are playing the aggressor. They're playing the controller. And then when the government comes to back them up, they turn into the victim in order to push that control onto the system so that system can take that story and affect the people or the situation that they've been conditioned to hate a lot of the times, been conditioned to feel like they're smarter than or better than. Or, that's what's going on. It's getting worse. It's getting deeper as people become more informed and other people become less informed. So I thought this was going to be a shorter video, but it's good to go in on this and then also have some proof of how of what you could be doing, like what you could do, and what's like a good counterbalance to the mind control programs that are affecting us every single day. Not to mention the fact that you're going to see, when you look at that video, you're actually going to see the real human fucking people in Oakland. You're going to see how they feel about this situation. You're going to see the kids, you're going to see the smiles, you're going to see the real people. And that's the thing you never see, because the system cannot show you that. It cannot humanize the people, because they are the people are the threat to the system. So they have to dehumanize them. This is why the so-called black man is the first one to die in every movie. This is why you have local news and mainstream media making, so-called black and brown peoples look like criminals and thugs. Literally, that's what Trump was saying. They're thugs and rapists and criminals and this and that. And the biggest thugs and criminals are the ones that came over here talking about this is their manifest destiny of this land. They ain't gonna never let you go there. You can't say that. That's taboo. That's blasphemy. This is really what it is. To say that is literally blasphemy, because this is really a religion, and the God is Western civilization. And the people who are ignoring this storyline, they're the ones who are actually defending this empire. They're defending this religion, whether they are aware of it or not. If you're not addressing it, if you're just reacting to and building up all these emotions, you're giving them the power. Yelling at chemtrails every day and scaring the shit out of people is giving them the power. Every single day, you're doing exactly what the mainstream media is doing, just in another style, in a more complex fashion, in a way that's just going to dumb people down with information instead of emotion. That's a good way to put it. People are being dumbed down and desensitized from these truther communities and these conspiracy channels like Alex Jones, being dumbed down and desensitized by information. Whereas in the mainstream media, in that realm of consciousness, people are being dumbed down and desensitized by emotion. This is why you have the laugh tracks shows, and then you have the late night talk shows talking about politics. It's all to desensitize your emotional consciousness and simultaneously trap you in that emotional consciousness. Whereas now you have the internet available, and you have individual people who are now still doing this, still playing the same rhythm of the old program, and are now dumbing down people with information and don't even know it, because it's the perspective of that information that's actually bringing about the dumbing down process. And you're creating like an emotion, an informative emotion. You're creating a situation where the information is having an effect on people the same way the emotion has effect on people from the basic mainstream media. So this is why I go in so hard with a lot of these so-called truther communities and channels and all this other stuff, is because until we stop doing that, until we start realizing what our offense really is, that's really what it boils down to. You got a lot of people playing defense right now, talking about the frogs are current gay, da, 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 and I wouldn't even say he's playing defense right now, because he's playing offense for the other side. But you know what I'm saying? Like, people, let's give Richie from Boston the benefit of the doubt that he's just a regular dude that's out there, talking about chemtrails. Okay, well, that's a good defense, but what is your offense? His offense, and I don't know his offense, I don't know what he would say, but from my perspective, it seems like his offense would be something like the power of, the Christ from Jesus, and that, and turning to Jesus and that whole thing. Okay, that's your offense. Good job. Congratulations. Thanks. What's the next person's offense? Well, their defense is, well, you can go into any community, the New Age community, they got love and light. That's their defense and their offense, because they have no offense. There's no offense there. And there's no defense because they act like there's nothing to defend. There's nothing to watch out for. They just act like the world doesn't exist. The world where people are being bombed and impoverished every day, they just act like it doesn't exist. So they don't think they need to defend anything. And since they don't think they need to defend anything, they don't think they need to create an offense, because their offense is this synthetic version of love and light. It's like, oh yeah, well, love and light is going to save the day. All right. We'll see. And then you have other communities that are just like playing defense in reference to the same thing goes in like these flat earth communities that are out there that are this is like playing defense to defend the flat versus the globe. And then your flatness, that's the defense, but the offense is just the flatness, or a flat earth model, or the flat earth information. Whatever it is, it's not grounded in anything that's truly rooted inside of you. It's still something else outside of you. It's easily manipulated. So there's nobody out there really doing any offense, internal offense. It's not like I said, it's not offense is not offense in reference to defense. When you get into offense, you have to go into anchoring yourself. And if you're anchoring yourself in the external, you're not really playing offense. You're still playing defense, tricking yourself, thinking that you're playing offense. You're not. You have no power. You're not empowered. You can only play offense if you have a solid place to empower yourself. Chemtrails are not a place to empower yourself. Flat Earth ain't a place, New Age shit, like all the aliens, all that stuff. That's not empowering you. It'll only go as far, and you're probably going to walk yourself into a trap if you keep that up. It's more than likely what's going to happen. So, anyway, I've gone on long enough in reference to how the mainstream works and what's going on with the psyche of these individuals, the microcosm and the macrocosm. That's the whole point, is to realize that the degrees of non-separation between the macro and the micro on the collective and the individual scale. They're all the same. The responsibility is still there. The information is still there, but it's not gonna happen on its own. So I don't know if I'm gonna play a part of the clip yet in this video, but regardless of whether I do or don't, the link is in the description. I would highly recommend checking that video out. Please share that video. Subscribe to ALLSTREETLOOKS' channel. It's gonna start putting out more content pretty soon. But yeah, check it out. Look into it, and yeah, thank you for the support. Thanks again for ALLSTREETLOOKS for putting this out there and really doing a really good job on that video, and painting the real light of the situation rather than painting a reactionary storyline. That's the usual thing. The usual is just like to put a reaction out there in like a press conference format. It's like, we're not like this, like that's it. But when you put it into an actual art, that's a different kind of effect on people, and it's very effective. So I would urge other people to do the same thing. Start talking to people. That's how you get the information from the inside, instead of just like drawing out information based upon like conspiracies or whatever. Just talk to people about what's happening on the streets today. They're gonna take it for as far as they can go. They're gonna take it further than you might have not even been aware of. But you won't know if you're stuck in your belief system of flat Earth is gonna save the world, or if we talk about chemtrails, it's gonna save the world, or make America great again is gonna save the world. Like whatever it is that perspective that you come from, there's always something to learn. And when we learn how to share the story from an empowered perspective, you're activating something that is very needed right now, individually and collectively. So thanks again for everybody for the support. And yeah, until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.
Man, I'm loving it. I'm loving the energy. I'm loving the people out here, all the love, everybody coming together, 510 day.
You feel me? All heart, all hustle. You feel me? Real hip hop. Oh yeah, big shout 510 day, Oakland. We still out here, man. Gentrification. You know what I'm saying? The soul is still here. Oakland is the soul of the Bay Area. What you heard, and we still out here.